Hi, I'm Nancy Rolfsema. We hope you've been enjoying our shows. We were thinking that maybe you've actually never made a quilt before, so we thought it would be fun to take you on a tour of a local quilt shop so you could see all the types of things that you might find there. Let's take a look.
Well, Nancy, imagine finding you in a quilt shop. I'm stunned. What are you doing?
Quilt shops are my happy place.
Mine too.
If I can be in a quilt shop, I was just telling somebody the hardest part about being in a quilt shop is not telling all of the shoppers what fabrics to choose and what pattern to do. So now that I'm in a quilt shop only as a visitor instead of working in a quilt shop, if I can get behind the table and start folding fabric, I'm a happy girl.
Well, that's marvelous. What are you folding?
Well, this is a fat quarter, so I kind of brought out here some different fabrics, some different pre-cuts. So when you're going into quilt shops nowadays, it used to be back when I was working in a shop 20 years ago, the pre-cut was a fat quarter. So to explain a fat quarter, when you're looking at a piece of fabric, a quarter of a yard is 9 inches. So in regular fabric world, they might cut you a quarter yard of fabric. Well, that's only going to be 9 inches wide, 42 inches long.
And that doesn't look very useful.
No, not as useful. So they started in quilt shop world, they came up with the idea of a fat quarter. And I'll never forget when I first started working in a quilt shop and they said, would you go cut fat quarters? Up until that moment in time, I thought that a fat quarter was just the quilt shop owner was being extra generous and they would do a 9-inch piece and maybe add an extra inch and call it fat. It's a fat quarter of a yard. What I found out was that a fat quarter is actually a half yard of fabric. So they cut it at the half yard mark, so 18 inches, and then they're going to cut it along the fold of the fabric, which creates a piece of fabric like this. So when I'm shopping, I'm extremely addicted to fat quarters. And quilt shop owners know this. It's almost like they plan it ahead of time. Nancy's coming, so something like this, they're going to have it all set up here so I can be going, yep, I need one of these and one of these and one of these and one of these.
Or they put the brighter colors out for Gina when Gina's coming.
Yeah, and the manufacturers have learned this too. So this is a pack that's actually made by the manufacturer, one of each of the fabrics from the collection. Here's another one. This is a 2.5-inch strip, sometimes called a jelly roll, sometimes going to be called a design roll, but you'll see that the manufacturers are doing these kits like this also. They've kind of figured us quilters out. Here is a charm pack. Charm packs are going to be 5.5-inch or 5-inch squares. You can take this pack of 5-inch pre-cuts, put them together, have a quilt top done so fast it make your head spin. So this is kind of the emergency quilt kit. All right, I need to get a quilt made for a bridal shower. All right, I can put these little babies together, have a quilt top done in no time. This one, some people call it a layer cake. It's also just a large 10-inch square pack of all of these fabrics. Imagine how quickly you could get a quilt made with these. You could take these, do half square triangles with them, put them all together. All of it's going to coordinate beautifully together. Super fast quilt.
I love things like this myself also because I'm not necessarily the best designer or color person in the world. So the fact that you've got somebody who is a trained artist who has assembled these collections makes it so easy
to just
for me
pick
to go
it up,
home and
take it home,
together.
and then even quilt kits. So here is a quilt kit. Really simple design with cute florals all over it. All the fabric is in this, and this one here, they've really gone an extra step into super duper easy. Check this out. The strips are all pre-cut. And even the little petals are all pre-cut with the fusible on them. Talk about super fast quilt making. Everything is done. So the strips together, peel the paper off, stitch, iron them down, get the quilt quilted, you're done.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. So this is, just one of the really amazing things that you're going to find in a quilt shop. And the creativity and the inspiration is just going to come right out of you. You're just not going to be able to stop.
That's great.
And that is the general idea.
Okay.
Yep.
So fabulous. So we've talked a little bit about fabric and what you find in a quilt shop. Now, good fabric. You're going to find different fabric in a quilt store, aren't you?
Yep, you are going to find high quality fabric in a quilt shop compared to what you might find in a craft store. Now, crafting fabric, there's nothing wrong with craft fabric. You just need to know what the fabric is going to be used for. If I'm making a craft project, I'm not concerned about the thread count of the fabric or whether or not it's going to shrink or the longevity of that fabric. When I'm making a quilt, I fully intend for every one of my quilts to last 100 years. So I'm only going to buy the very best quality fabric. In a quilt shop, that's what you're going to expect.
And that's all you'll find in a quilt shop.
Yep,
is
pretty
the
much.
best quality.
Yep.
And so the dyes are going to hold better.
Yes.
The printing is going to be better.
Yep.
The actual base fabric that they printed on is going to be a higher thread count so
Yep.
that the printing can be higher quality.
Yep, it's called the gray goods. It's going to have a higher thread count, like Gina said, so the fabrics are going to be softer. They're not going to be, the dyes are not going to be really stiff. There's not going to be so much sizing in the fabric that you can't actually feel what it's going to feel like. These fabrics aren't going to bleed either. Personally, and I would never tell anybody specifically to do this, but I never pre-wash my cottons and stuff. I know the fabrics I'm buying are all high quality quilt shop fabrics. I don't need to worry about them bleeding or shrinking. It's of no concern to me. It's high quality fabric, and I've never had those fabrics behave unexpectedly.
That's great.
Yep.
So what about thread? Thread is something else that you find in a quilt store.
Yep, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about threads now.
We're in front of a rainbow.
And stuff. The rainbow of fabulous threads and stuff. When I walk into a shop, I will be enamored by the fabrics, but the thread, I want one of everything. And there's no such thing as too much thread in my world. So here we're going to have polyester threads for doing garments and bags. You're going to have the specialty threads like a silk thread for doing hand applique. Coming on over here, you're going to have threads for your bobbin and the top line for doing your quilting, so really beautiful variegated colors. You're going to have your cottons for doing piecing. Down here is going to be specialty threads. These are going to be wools. They do a lot of wool applique in this shop, so they're going to have wool thread. And then over here is a new line of threads from a specific designer for her work. So these are going to be a pearl cotton, beautiful colors, on over to some other variegated cotton. So when you're into a shop, look for a shop that's going to have a variety of threads for all the different projects that you're working on. There is not one thread for every project.
So each particular technique has a thread that would be the best for that technique.
Yep.
Right? And in a good quilt shop, you're going to find all of them.
Oh, more thread the better.
Or in my basement.
Or
your basement.
Or my basement.
So just like with thread, there's a proper thread for each quilting technique. There are tools that are very specific to quilting techniques, aren't there?
Yep, so this would be the notions wall here at this quilt shop. They're going to have all the different notions and tools for doing lots of different projects, quilting techniques. So they're going to have items that you're not going to find in your general craft store. So this is going to be a non-stick pressing sheet. Lots of different techniques you're going to do with this, mainly for your fusible applique. These are called perfect circles. This is what you're going to use when you're doing hand applique. You're going to be able to make those perfect little berry circles. Again, you're not really going to find this at a craft store. This is the kind of stuff you're going to find in a quilt shop. And all the way down to the quality of the products, not every needle is created equal. So this is a needle that is specifically designed for smooth stitching. It's going to cost more than
But
your
it will
general.
probably last longer.
Oh, it will. It'll last longer. It's going to be smoother. It's going to make the technique easier because you have the proper tool for the job.
So a good tool makes the job and the project cleaner, more fun to make,
Yeah.
and you'll end up with a better result.
Yeah, it'll be, you know, and if the project's going to be easier to make, you're going to want to make more.
Love
That's the
that.
goal.
Nancy, look what I found. I want to make one of these.
Of course you do. So when you're in a shop, you're going to find great samples. When you find that great sample, you're going to need to find the pattern to go with it. The pattern is going to tell you what fabric you need, the zippers you need, the thread that you need, so you can take it home and make it. So not only patterns, but books. Keep in mind that when you're looking in a quilt shop, you're going to be able to find books that are going to take you from the most basic techniques all the way up to the newest, most complicated techniques. So when you get into a quilt shop a lot, you're going to be able to say, oh, that's a new book. I've never seen that one before. So get inspired by the books and the fabric that you see in a shop.
And you're going to find everything from traditional quilting to very modern techniques,
Yep.
from very complicated techniques up to an easy technique.
Yes.
So there's really kind of something for everybody, isn't there?
Everybody, absolutely.
And this is mine. That's a different machine, Nancy. What are you doing there?
This is a quilting machine. This machine is specifically designed to quilt. All it does is one straight stitch. But what's cool about a machine like this is when you're working on your regular sewing machine, your space for your quilt is maybe 5 to 10 inches at best. On a machine like this, you get 15 inches. So imagine you're working on like a queen size quilt. You can actually easily get the majority of the queen size quilt.
You're rolling it up and
yeah,
the rolled up part is
shoving it in there. You've got this beautiful big table that's nice and smooth. Something like this is going to make the quilting process easier. Doesn't mean that you have to have a machine like this to do the quilting with, but it's just going to make the process easier.
Okay, and I can attest to that because I have a regular home machine that I was quilting something pretty large on, and I wish that I had one of these.
Kind of run out of space. You know, I've quilted a queen size quilt on a 40-year-old Kenmore sewing machine. Free motion quilted it. Turned out great. And then I moved from that to a long arm machine. Did the long arming for about 12 years. A machine like this is kind of right between the two, between a basic sewing machine and the long arm machine. Gives you lots and lots of space. I could literally sit here and quilt all day, so if you'll excuse me, please.
So Nancy, this is the part of the store that offers machines. Tell me a little bit about what is available.
Well, generally speaking, if a shop is going to have machines, they're going to have machines all the way from the most basic beginner style machine all the way up to the newest embroidery machines.
Ooh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, these embroidery machines can do anything. The hoops are big enough that you can actually put it around yourself like a hula hoop. It blows your mind. When they first started with embroidery machines, it was little 4-inch embroideries. Now they can go up to like a 15-inch embroidery, so you can do a whole quilt, a whole shirt. It's amazing. So the thing that you're going to need to know about your shop is you want to buy your machine from a shop that you know and trust, and that they're going to give you lots and lots of training and class ideas. So in a shop like this, here is going to be some of the embroidery designs that you can buy, lots of different things going on, but all of these that you see behind you, these are going to be samples and class samples, so people can actually come and learn how to use their embroidery machine in a shop like this.
Okay. And an embroidery machine is you can use it as a sewing machine,
Yes.
but it really has a whole other world of technique involved. to it
And
as well.
you know, it's kind of funny with embroidery machines. Some people are going to think of just sewing as, you know, creating garments or quilts. Some people that do embroidery rarely ever will make anything without their embroidery machines. Embroidery machines today can piece a quilt, can applique a quilt. You don't ever actually have to do any of your own scant quarter-inch seam allowances. The machine will do it for you in the hoop.
Sounds like magic.
It is kind of like magic. It won't do the dishes, but it'll do everything else that you ever ask it to do.
Okay. Well, Nancy, thanks for giving us a tour of the shop. I really appreciate it. And now I got to go look at some of these fun things to start working on.
Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. So on that tour, we took you to the section where all the really cool threads are in the shop. I thought it might be fun to show you how I use some of those specialty threads in some of the quilts that I've made. On a quilt like this has a lot of wool applique, so I really like to use the heavyweight wool threads for the decorative stitches on my wool applique, and then I'll just use the regular cotton threads for the quilting portion. On this quilt, I use just regular cotton threads for most of it, but I love what metallic threads do when you stitch them in a straight line on the inner border. Metallic threads have a tendency to break when you're doing free motion quilting, so I enjoy using them on straight lines, less tendency to break. On this quilt, you can see some of the variegated cotton threads that I used in the quilting designs on the border. Again, love that straight line metallic on the inner border. And then I also use the threads in the quilting process to embellish and do designs. The last thing we talked about on the tour was the embroidery machines. Embroidery machines today are amazing. They can absolutely do anything. And when you think about them, don't just think of monogramming a towel or making something for a bib. You can do so many things in quilting. On a quilt like this, the blocks themselves were done with the embroidery machine and a really shiny polyester thread, and then I just put the blocks together into a quilt and quilted it. The next quilts, though, you're going to see the amazing things you can do with an embroidery machine. You can do the labels for your quilt. So this was completely done in the embroidery machine, even the stitching around the hedgehog for the design. This one, the piecing, was done in the hoop. This little square was not pieced separate. It was pieced in the hoop and then the embroidery added. This is a way with the embroidery machine that you can do applique with the embroidery machine, all done in the hoop. This crazy quilt, all of the piecing and the embellishment done in the hoop. And this is just adorable. This applique was done, stitched around, cut out on the edges, and even the free motion quilting was done in the embroidery machine. And this is one of my favorites. When you want to have a perfect quilted design, you can do it in your embroidery machine. This one done with double weight threads, so you're really going to see the design. In the next segment, I want to show you how I pick out fabrics. It's a neat technique I came up with working with beginners to help them feel more comfortable picking out the fabrics for their quilts. Thanks for watching our video. Be sure you subscribe to our channel. We wouldn't want you to miss a single one. Leave a comment. We would love to hear from you.